Hi there, welcome back to the channel. Great to see you again. Now this video is all about the 10 common mistakes that I see entrepreneurs and startups make all the time. I spent 20 years helping entrepreneurs and small business founders get their new products to market, and so over the years I've seen all the common pitfalls and all the errors that people make, and these are the 10 biggest ones and the 10 most common. So make sure you keep watching to find out what they are and how you can avoid them and massively increase your chances of successful product development and launch. Right, let's start then with number one. Mistake number one is solve a high frequency or high intensity problem. If you get this bit right in the beginning, then it puts the whole project on a much more solid foundation. So if you're solving a genuine problem that your customers care about, everything else gets easier. Your messaging gets easier, your marketing gets easier, sales become easier. If you're presenting your idea to a company for a joint venture, for example, that's easier because they can empathize with the problem that you're solving. It's clear that it is a genuine problem, and then at that point, people are much happier either to part with money to buy your product that solves that problem or to do some kind of deal with you where they're paying you for the idea because they can see you're solving a genuine need. It's worth going a little bit more now into what I mean by a high frequency or high intensity problem. What you're really looking to solve is something that is critical, so it's going to cause serious injury or death or whatever if it isn't solved, but happens very infrequently, or something that isn't life or death at all. It's just a minor niggle, like the fact that you can never find the TV remote, for example. But it's a high frequency problem in that it happens to almost everyone. It's happening every day. So what you don't really want to do is try and fall in the middle where your idea is neither high intensity, so it's a low level problem like the finding the TV remote, but it's also low volume. Not many people have that problem, because in that scenario you're probably not going to make enough money out of your idea to justify the development of it. You're really looking for something that is, say, high frequency or high intensity. So the example I often give of a high intensity problem is getting disabled people out of a multi-story building in an emergency. That can be really difficult because the lifts don't work, and so you've got to get a less able person, less mobile person down several flights of stairs. Now that's not a problem that happens every day, but when it does happen, it's a huge problem and it can be a life or death scenario. And the solution to that kind of high intensity problem is something called an evac chair. We work with a couple of companies who make and sell evac chairs, and their products are barely ever used. But because it's such a high intensity problem, then there are all these regulations now coming in, basically telling landlords of that type of building that they've got to have these chairs, and so there's a huge market now for them and several big players selling this type of product. So that gives you an example of a solution to a high intensity problem. Let's look at a high frequency problem now. So this is the idea basically that you're tired, you want to have a rest on a train or a plane or whatever else, but it's light, there are people all around you. How do you kind of do something that means it's easier to sleep? And this is a solution. Okay, it's a little bit of a facetious one, but nevertheless, this is a product that's actually done really quite well. This ostrich pillow. So it's not a life or death scenario if you can't take a nap on a train, but it is something that a lot of people have a problem with. It's a high frequency problem, and therefore this product actually has come along and has done really well. Couch coaster that we talked about is another example of that. It's not a huge problem if you spill a drink in a sitting room. Obviously you can end up staining the carpet, or it can just be a bit of a faff because you've got to get up and get another glass of water. But it happens a lot to a lot of different people, and therefore there is a good solution there in the couch coaster, and it's done very well as a result. Another low intensity but high frequency problem we've looked at is tofu. So the tofu press, selling 50,000 units a year now. No one is going to suffer serious injury because they're not able to compress their tofu, but nevertheless, actually, a lot more people eating a vegan diet, a lot of people buying tofu, and they do want to be able to marinate it effectively and press it. So that gives you a good idea of the type of things you need to be thinking about if you're really going to make an idea a success. And that really is the foundation of it all. And it's really, really beneficial to validate your idea. Validate that you're solving a genuine problem, that is something that your target market actually care about, and critically that they're going to pay money to solve. We have done focus groups before. I did it with my pushchair. I was like, what do you think to these wheels? What do you think to our ventilation system and natural fabrics? And the focus group was like, yeah, it's fantastic. Love it all, love it all. And then you say, right, well, would you pay more for that? It's like, oh no, I wouldn't pay any more for it. It's like, well, it's going to cost me more to put this ventilation system into the carry cot. But if you're not going to spend any more money on it, then obviously I'm not solving a problem that you feel is actually worth any money if I solve. So you've got to ask those open-ended questions in your market research in those focus groups and really get to the heart of, are you solving a genuine critical issue? And if you are, then actually either a critical issue or a high frequency issue, because if you are solving that, then in my experience, you have a much better foundation for your product and are much more likely to succeed in the market. Right, so the second key lesson in terms of actually producing a product that is going to sell is to make sure you can market your USP. Now, what I mean by that is, let's say you've solved the problem of a bumpy ride for a pushchair. So you've now got this clever suspension system as we have with the wheels and everything else, and you can give the baby a really smooth ride. The challenge we had was, how do you persuade the customer of that? How do you market that solution to the customer? And the best way of marketing it, really, I think, is to say something along the lines of smoothest ride for your baby. But the problem is, Bugaboo, the leading pushchair manufacturer arguably in the world, had already coined that expression. They were already saying that about their pushchairs. Now, we tested our pushchair against theirs. We ran it down a track, we measured all the G-forces, and ours was significantly better than theirs in terms of giving a smoother ride. But how do we market that? Bugaboo have already started using that expression. They've had it out in the marketplace for a couple of years. It's very, very difficult to challenge that as a startup brand coming into the marketplace. Now, we could have done a whole lot of videos. We could have shown how ours was demonstrably better. But that is a huge amount of effort, and it's an uphill struggle. What you really want to do, once you've identified this problem that you're solving, is make sure that you can actually market that to your target market. And really, you want something that's really easy to communicate. Visually, you've got two images, and you can communicate your solution. One's got a picture of a spilled drink, the other's got a picture of a drink that's held in a couch coaster on a sofa arm. You're immediately communicating the problem and the solution visually without saying anything at all. And that is the key thing. How are you going to market your solution to this problem? How are you going to communicate your USP effectively? And that is absolutely critical. You do need to make sure that you can do that. Even if you're solving a high frequency or high intensity problem, if you can't find a good way of marketing that visually and effectively and quickly, then you've got to take a step back and go, actually, is this a sensible thing to pursue? So the third lesson is, don't be greedy. Now, we made this mistake with our pushchair. We went to retailers and we tried to haggle away and get their margin down, and we got their margin down in some cases to like 32%. But the problem with that is, if you're greedy with it and you don't give retailers enough margin, then actually they're not going to sell your product, because they're not making significantly more money than they are on the other brands. Then they'll just sell the other brands because it's easier. You can imagine, can't you, if you're a shop assistant in a store on a Saturday morning selling pushchairs, and you've sold 300 Bugaboo pushchairs previously, and you know the product intimately, and then comes along ARC, and you're now expected to learn how to fold it and unfold it. You don't want to look stupid in front of the customer, and you haven't sold any of those ones. Which products are you going to sell? Well, you're going to sell the Bugaboo, aren't you? And you're going to have to give the store a significant reason to actually make that extra effort to sell a new product of a new brand. And that's what we experienced. It was really, really hard to persuade the retailer to bother to make the effort to sell this product instead. And that's the thing, and it's not just true if you're going down the retail route, but wherever you're going with it, what you don't want to do is price yourself out of the market. Early on, you need volume, you need traction. If you've got loads of sales and loads of customers, but you're not making much money out of every product, then you can go and raise an investment and you can work with other people to increase your margin. There's things you can do. As you increase your volumes, you can actually pay the factory less often for the product and increase your margin that way. If you're shipping more, then you might get preferential shipping rates and you can grow your margin that way. Equally, if there's a real demand for your product, you might be able to then go back to retailers and say, right, well, look, you've got all these sales. You know this is a really effective product, but you're going to need to pay a little bit more now because I need to make more margin out of this. But you can't do much if basically you haven't got the traction, you haven't got the sales. Investors take one look at that kind of a business and they just say, no way, I'm not investing in that. You haven't proven that you've got a market for your product. But if you've proven the market and now you're struggling just to make the margin, then that is something that you can get support with, get further investment with to help. And it can well be that as you then scale it, you can start to eke out that margin and get where you need to get to. But don't be greedy on your first orders. Theo Prophetus always says, don't expect to make any money at all on your first batch. It's just about getting your product and your name out there. And speaking to people who run web sales businesses, they don't make any money generally in the first year or so because it's all going back into marketing. And it's only after they've established that brand, then they're going to start to make money. Amazon didn't make money for years. It's a common model now. You've got to get market share first. And when you've got that, then you can start to eke out the profit. Now, another common mistake that I see entrepreneurs and startups make is trusting that distributors and retailers will do what they say they're going to do. In my experience, they don't. They'll sell you a great story. We're going to do all this marketing. We're going to do this, or we'll sell it to everyone who comes through the door. We'll put it in prime position by the front door, or a joint venture company. Oh yes, we'll get this developed in 6 months. We're going to put this out to all of our global offices and make sure that actually this is huge. There's a lot of promises when someone's trying to get you on board. And if you've got a great product and it solves a genuine problem, you'll probably have people gathering around saying, oh yeah, we'd love to stock it in our store. We're going to put it on our TV ads, all this kind of other stuff. And in my experience, most of that never happens. And you're always best off assuming that those stores or distributors or joint venture partners will do the absolute minimum. Now, what that really means is you're going to have to contractually or in writing get them to agree what they're going to do, because otherwise, in all likelihood, they will just skimp on it and it won't happen. Or you're going to have to agree with them basically, you're going to do this, 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 and this, and in which case I will give you this margin. If you don't, then actually what we're going to have to do is switch to a different margin that is less good for you because you're not doing all of these things. So wherever possible, try to ensure that yes, you're positive and encouraging with them and you're getting a good deal and everything else, but make sure that if there's critical things you need them to do for your business, that actually that is in some way contractual, or there's some reward for doing it or penalty for not doing it to make it happen. Because in those initial conversations, often everyone is very enthusiastic. 6 months down the line, when inevitably some things aren't going the right way, you can find that all of a sudden that partner just is not doing what they said they were going to do. So make sure you're not naive, and wherever possible, ensure that your partners within this venture are actually doing what they said they're going to do. With a license agreement, it's quite easy. You can kind of put some minimums in there and basically say, look, you're going to achieve this minimum, and if you don't, you're still going to pay me the equivalent as though you had reached that minimum. That just means if they take 2 years to get the product to market and they're not selling anything, that at least you're making a minimum every year out of that license agreement. And that is key. Just don't be naive and make sure wherever possible, what the company should be doing for you, they are contractually obliged to do. The next big mistake that I see entrepreneurs and startups make is getting their pricing wrong. It's really hard to price a product correctly. But really what you need to do is start top down. So you need to look at the competitor products and price yourself accordingly. And one of the big mistakes that happens at that point is that entrepreneurs get all excited and they think they can charge the same amount for their product as the big brands. They go, well, my product's better. It's got this unique feature. It solves a genuine problem. Therefore, even though there's a camera tripod on the market from the top brand that's £300 and that's the most expensive one, because my product's so much better, actually I can charge £400. You might be able to. But often, actually, the brand is worth more to the customer than something they haven't heard of, even though it's got some unique feature that's better. It's not always the case, but often, again and again, what we'd see is that those products don't sell and they end up having to reduce their price, and only really when they are a significant price under the brand do they start to sell. And the reason is that customers unfortunately put a huge amount of value on the brand. So often you'll end up having to come underneath that, and that can feel really hard. You put all this money in, you've got this product that's really good, it's patented, it solves a problem, it's better than anything else out there, but you're having to sell it cheaper than some of the other inferior products just to actually get some sales because people don't know the brand and aren't buying your product. And the thing is, you can always put your price up. So again, this is a huge mistake that we made with the pushchair. We went in originally actually at $9.99 for the pushchair, which was more expensive than the Bugaboo. It was cheaper than a couple of the brands and their limited editions, but it was more expensive than our kind of main competitors. And all the retailers and distributors just said, no, it's not going to sell at that. We had to bring that price down to $8.99, and that's where we launched. And now it's even cheaper again. And the thing is, people trusted the brands. People want the brands and the look and the image of the brands and are prepared to pay more for that. What we struggle to do is persuade customers to pay more for the functionality and the features. And that is often true across the board. Now, what we probably should have done is go in at a really competitive price, got a lot of products sold, so there's lots of people then pushing our pushchair around and talking to their sister about it and all that kind of stuff, and then start to increase the price at that point. And we were told, oh, you can never put your price up. It's always only going to come one way. It's only going to come down. It's nonsense. All of our competitors in the pushchair space have put their prices up over the last 3 years for various different reasons. Shipping prices have gone up hugely, Brexit, pound, all that kind of stuff. And we could have put our prices up with that as well. And there are other pushchair brands who came into the market very reasonably priced that are now in the premium space. They've just nudged their price bit by bit by bit. And that is the much more sensible way of doing it. Again, it ties into the earlier point. You need market share, you need volume, and you need sales assistants to sell the product and gain confidence in it. You'll need your joint venture partner to be selling quite a lot of product, and therefore actually you have huge confidence that it's worth putting more marketing money behind it. And as soon as you start to kill that by having the price too high, then it just puts a damper on everything. If you can get the volume, it has such an amount of benefit that it's definitely worth sacrificing some early margin to really get some decent sales numbers under your belt. And you really want to get your pricing right, because otherwise you can miss out on margin as well. If you do go in too cheap and actually your customers are prepared to pay more for it than that, then you're just losing margin and you're losing money that you can reinvest. So you really do need to do some market research. You need to establish really what customers are prepared to pay for it. Inevitably, it's a question of, as you put your price up, you do less volume. You've kind of got to hit the sweet spot in the middle where you're maximizing your overall return. It isn't easy. Make sure you're talking to your retailer, your JV partner, or whoever it is that you're selling with, whatever route you're kind of going down, to try and ensure you're getting your pricing right. Sometimes it's best to start off selling direct, because if you sell direct, it doesn't really matter. That price isn't across 14 different retailers, you can tweak and adjust that price until you get the perfect balance, and then look to go to retailers or to use a different route to market at that point, when actually you know that the price you're charging maximizes your revenue because you're getting a good amount of volume, you're getting a reasonable price for it that people are prepared to pay, and it's going to work well for you. Another big mistake that people make is to over-engineer their first product or add too much into their first product. Now, the solution to this is go for a minimum viable product approach. That really is, it's a good product, but it's the minimum the customer would accept and will pay for and give a good review on. But don't add in all these extra features. Don't make it stronger or more engineered than it really needs to be. Just get a product out there that's the minimum acceptable standard. And then with generation 2, you can add in additional function, you can add in additional features, you can upgrade maybe in the materials, or you can look to build out a range and go, right, well, some of what we thought we wanted to do, we haven't done it on our MVP, but actually we're now going to bring out a luxury model that does have the metal casing, or it does have the polycarbonate clear screen, or whatever it is. So you can add that in later on, but once you're actually making some money, once you have some revenue coming in, and once you've established a core product on the market. Too often what happens is people try and do everything in their product. They over-engineer it, they make it overly robust and durable. It has all the features of the competitors and these USPs on top, and it just ends up too expensive for the market, or they run out of money developing all of this and don't have enough to actually do the marketing of the product and get the sales in. So really stick with a minimum viable product approach. The next lesson you can learn from a lot of my previous clients is to focus on what your customer wants, not what you think they want. And also not what they say to you in a focus group or say to you in a kind of one-to-one meeting that is amazing about your products and they absolutely love. So many times with market research, the person that you're speaking to will give you an overly positive answer. And the way to combat that is to either not have those conversations yourself and use someone else so that the person doesn't feel like they might upset you about your idea if they're negative about it, or ask open-ended questions that are focused on price. That's great. I'm glad you love my new rocking horse that's got a cup holder on the side, but how much would you pay for it? And if you ask open questions like that and don't lead the witness, so to speak, then you start to find out what the customer really will pay for. And if you want to know what your customer really thinks of your product, it's about what they'll spend their money on. It's not about what words they use to describe what they think about your idea and how it makes them feel, because inevitably that is just about making sure that you're happy with them and the conversation continues and that it all goes well. But that isn't useful to you. What you need is a genuine answer to what your customers really want. And as I say, it's all about what they'll actually spend their hard-earned money on. That's the key question to ask. And keep it open. Don't lead them. We've done a market research piece of work before. We were trying to ask open-ended questions, but the client completely refused. And we ended up saying something along the lines of, you'd pay £10 for this, wouldn't you? Whereas actually, if we'd asked an open-ended question, we would have had that most people would be prepared to pay £6 or £7 for it. But the client didn't want to hear that. They didn't want to know that their product was only worth £6 or £7. They wanted it to be worth £10 or more. They felt it ought to be, and so they led the witness in the asking of the question. Don't do that. Ask genuine questions, open questions, and understand what it is your client really wants and is prepared to pay for. Don't design the product that you want. Design the product that's going to sell. Another mistake that we find people make is to not focus enough on the cost price. So they're just focused on the materials and the finishes and all the exciting bits of it. And they're like, oh yeah, we'll have this packaging, we'll do this. And yeah, let's add in that additional feature, or that accessory should be part of the package. Let's add that in for free. But you've really got to focus hard on your cost price. And it comes back to the minimum viable product approach. But it's a focus on what's that actually going to cost into production. And I will never forget, we made 28 changes, I think, between our batch 1 pushchair and our batch 2 pushchair. We added all these little things in and improved things, the quality of the print. We added another logo badge. We changed the colour of one of the internal parts so that it looked a little bit better. We upgraded our zip pulls with a higher quality PU leather. All these kind of minor changes. And I never forget that our non-exec director, who had 22 years in the industry prior to working with us, he said, the thing is, you guys have looked at all these changes and made all these changes, and not once has any of you talked about what that's going to add to the cost. And I said, well, it doesn't add much to the cost at all. He goes, well, no, it doesn't, but you add 28 lots of not very much up, and it does add to the cost. And actually, if you're making changes between batch 1 and batch 2, why are you not making changes that actually give you more margin and make the products more cost effective to produce without compromising the experience for the end customer? He said, the thing is, you've completely taken your eye off the cost price of the product and you've just focused on trying to create the best, most perfect product that you can. And that was a huge lesson to me, and I'd like you guys to kind of learn from that as well. Don't lose sight of the cost of manufacturing the product. And every time you want to add something or change something or improve something, also ask the question, as we do this, is there a right way to value engineer it to bring the cost price down? Because if you can do that and you can keep focusing on little by little bringing the cost price down through clever design and value engineering and improvements in assembly and making things simpler but more effective, then actually all the time you're gradually improving your margin. But if all you do is improve your product, improve your product, improve your product, ignorant of the cost implications, you're just going to erode your margin to the point where the thing doesn't make any profit anymore. Another big lesson for you guys to learn is do not underestimate what it takes to work with big retailers. We landed John Lewis, we were over the moon, and we launched with them, and it was great. But training all their staff across 10 stores, doing everything that was required for their internal system, like video training and PDF checklists and all this, up and down to Victoria, where their headquarters are in London, discussing things like kind of marketing strategy and pricing and all those kind of things. It all used a huge amount of resource, and we just were not ready for it. You really do need to make sure that you've grounded your product, that you know what all the issues are with the product and you've solved all of those, that you've improved everything you possibly can, whilst also, where possible, cutting things back that are unnecessary to improve your margin. You get all your marketing materials sorted out, all the right lifestyle imagery and video and everything else, have been selling it for a while, have got the price point right, and then look to go in with a big retailer. The thing is, if you try and evolve and change what you're doing while in with a big retailer, it's incredibly difficult. It's like trying to steer an oil tanker. Getting John Lewis to update the images on their website took months, but we knew we had much better images. We knew they were much more effective with our end customer. We just couldn't get them uploaded onto the website quick enough. And you really do, therefore, need to get everything established and sorted and proven, and then look to work with a big retailer. And the other thing is, if you land a big retailer, you need to take a really serious decision then about, what do I need to actually ensure that we stay in with this retailer? You want to make sure you're doing everything possible to retain that listing with that retailer. But often that's going to mean going to investors, going to the bank and getting a loan to make sure you have the resources to properly see the potential of that relationship with that retailer. We really probably should have raised £150,000 extra from our investors and done a huge amount more with John Lewis to make that work. We probably also should have picked 10 stores to be in that were within quite a tight radius so that we could service all of those stores on the same day or much easier without traveling all over the country to train their staff. And just think through that kind of implication of what it's really going to mean for you if you land that big relationship, and have you got the resource to deliver on it and to fulfill its potential. So the last point then really, and I see entrepreneurs make this mistake all the time, is if you're presenting your product, and almost any route you go down, whether you're licensing or JV or trying to get in with a retailer or distributor, you're going to have to present your product. Now focus your presentation on the benefits to the person you're talking to. So often, and I had it a couple of weeks ago, a guy sent me his presentation for his great new idea, and he said, I can't understand why I'm not getting anywhere with this. And I went through this 40-page presentation, and I could see why he wasn't getting anywhere with it. It was all about the technical detail and the patent and how it worked and all this kind of thing. But not once did it talk about the benefit to the consumer or to the person he was looking to take it forward with, i.e. someone to do a license deal. So if you're putting a presentation together for your product, you want to go and discuss a joint venture arrangement, start with the benefits to that company. Now, if you work with me and we do a joint venture on this product idea, then it will mean you're expanding your range, you're making more margin out of your current customer base, you're giving your customers a product that we know that they want, and so you're developing a better relationship with them, and you've got an additional product in your portfolio. If you work with us on this product, you're going to make great margin, or you're going to sell lots of product, whatever it is. And it might seem obvious, but so few people do it. Inevitably, entrepreneur presentations, they go into the USP and the technical detail and how it's patented, but you've lost the person before you even started. Tell them why they should be interested in the presentation, why they should be listening, and why this is good for them. You don't have to make it really obvious. You don't have to say, oh, look, if you retail this product, you're going to make loads more money. It doesn't have to be that crass. What it can be, if you're presenting to a retailer, for example, is this product complements your existing range. This product is something that we know that your customers are looking for and looking to buy. If you stock our product in combination with our marketing strategy, it's going to result in higher sales, and because we're offering you a really good margin, then that's going to mean a good cash margin for your business. And that's the kind of way that you can just pip their interest. And the other thing it does is, even if it feels a bit obvious, it means a lot to them, because it means that you're thinking about it from their perspective. You're not just going in there saying, I want you to retail my product, I want a listing in your store, I want it over there just by the door so everyone sees it when they come in. That kind of presentation just hugely turns anyone off. It's not a two-way empathetic relationship, it's not a partnership, it's not understanding, it's just all about what that person wants. And too often I've seen those presentations and the person doesn't even get an email back. And you can tell why. The buyer's not interested in what that person wants from them. What they're interested in is stocking products and finding partnerships that are going to be mutually beneficial. Where sure, that person gets their product into a retailer, starts selling the product in volume, but the retailer is also getting what they need, which is desirable products that are drawing customers into store, that are going to make them a good return.